The scene opens in London, outside a landmark government building often used for high-level diplomatic briefings. A cold autumn breeze moves through the square as camera crews position their tripods and journalists gather in front of the press hall. Black cars arrive one after another. The leaders of several nations step out, each of them representing a country directly tied to Ukraine's survival in the war. They walk forward in a deliberate choreography, aware of how closely every gesture will be watched. Inside, the lights are bright. A banner behind the podium reads, "Securing our future." This is not a routine press statement. This is the coalition of the willing, a grouping of countries that views the war in Ukraine not only as a conflict between two states, but as a front line in the future security of Europe. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer stands at the centre. To his left is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. To his right, Dutch NATO figure Mark Rutte. Beside them, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Netherlands Prime Minister Dick Schoof. Together, they send a message of alignment even as each country faces internal political debate and military constraints. The room falls quiet as the press conference begins. Zelensky steps forward first. His tone is measured, firm. He knows his words must reach both allies and adversaries. Diplomacy matters only when it can lead to real decisions, Zelensky says. He explains that conversations alone do not shift battle lines, do not deter missiles, and do not save the lives of soldiers or civilians. He continues, and when it comes to Russia, that dish has many ingredients. The essential ones are real forms of pressure on Russia. Sanctions, our long-range capabilities, political pressure, accountability for war crimes, and real actions regarding Russian assets. His message is that diplomacy is meaningful only when backed by power, cost, and consequences. The war has entered a stage where negotiation cannot be separated from the ability to strike, to defend, and to weaken the opponent's ability to continue the war. Zelensky then speaks more directly about Ukraine's evolving military strategy. He does not hide what the country is doing. We are running our own campaign pressure using drones and missiles, specifically targeting the Russian oil sector, he says. The oil infrastructure is among Russia's most valuable strategic assets and one of the primary sources of funding for its war. Thus, long-range capability directly strengthens diplomacy. The more losses Putin suffers on his own territory, the fewer attacks he can conduct on the front lines, and the sooner he will agree to meaningful diplomacy. He emphasises that the strategic logic has become clear. Make the cost of continuing the war greater than the cost of negotiating its end. Zelensky pauses, then adds, "That is why we are working to obtain additional Tomahawk cruise missiles, Storm Shadow missiles, and other capabilities." This is not simply a list of military equipment, it is a statement of operational intent. The war is shifting from a defence of the front line to a calibrated strike across borders, targeting infrastructure deep inside Russian territory. The goal is to change the strategic calculations at the Kremlin itself. As Zelensky speaks, cameras cut to Starmer, listening closely. The British Prime Minister takes the podium next. His words are direct. He does not debate the justification. He confirms the economic front of the conflict is expanding. "First, we will act to take Russian oil and gas off the global market," Starmer says. Last week, the United Kingdom became the first country to sanction all of Russia's oil majors. On Wednesday, the United States acted decisively to join us, together with further sanctions from the EU, and we're choking off the Russian war machine. And I'm urging others to take these steps too, to go further, to reduce their dependencies and incentivise third countries to stop buying these tainted resources. This is the heart of London's recent strategy, dismantling the financial capacity of Russia's war effort, piece by piece. The sanctions target supply chains, tanker fleets, insurance networks, and the shadow fleet of ships transporting Russian oil disguised under secondary registries. Starmer then outlines the second phase. Second, we're determined to push on with the progress on Russia's sovereign assets and unlock billions to help finance Ukraine's defence. The bill for Russia's destruction in Ukraine should be paid by Russia, so we want to move ahead at speed with the work needed to deliver reparation loans and get the funds flowing to Ukraine. The logic is uncompromising. Russia will pay for the reconstruction of the territory it has bombed, the cities it has levelled, and the infrastructure it has damaged. This marks a shift from earlier diplomatic language. It is no longer about temporary assistance. It is about permanent accountability. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen takes the microphone next. Her tone is calm but resolute. I think this week we have taken significant steps with the EU's new sanctions package targeting the Russian energy sector, shadow fleet, much more. The United States have now sanctioned Russia's two largest oil companies, and last week the UK also announced sanctions targeting those companies as well. She then turns to the wider strategic picture. I think Putin's strategy has been to wait for us to stop at some point, to give up. But of course, this will never happen. It is a response to a long-held Kremlin tactic. Assume Western support will weaken before Russian capacity does. But the coalition insists that assumption is wrong. As the leaders stand in front of the cameras, the broader stakes come into focus. This is not only about Ukraine reclaiming territory, it is about preventing a precedent in Europe where borders can be changed by force. It is about ensuring that the international system retains the principle that sovereignty cannot be violated without consequence. The leaders know the war has already reshaped the security structures of the continent. NATO deployments along its eastern flank have increased. Sweden and Finland have joined the alliance. European defence budgets are rising after decades of reduction, but the war is also testing unity. Energy prices have risen and political debates have intensified across multiple capitals. Some populations are asking how long support should continue. The leaders at this press conference are aware of this reality. Their statements are not only directed at Moscow, but also at their own domestic audiences. The camera returns to Zelensky. His face shows the weight of 2 years of war. He does not speak of victory in simple terms. He speaks of endurance, pressure, leverage, and timing. His appeal is not emotional. It is strategic. The message is that Ukraine can force Russia to negotiate responsibly only if supplied with the tools that raise the cost of continued aggression. The camera moves across the press gallery. A journalist asks about the timeline of sanctions, the practical impact, and the political unity required to enforce them. Starmer responds in measured detail. These sanctions, he says, are not symbolic. They are designed to alter supply routes, raise transaction costs, and prevent Russia from shifting its export strategy to new buyers. Zelensky adds that the combination of long-range strikes and sanctions forms a feedback loop, weakening Russia's infrastructure while reducing its to pay for repair or production. As the press conference continues, the narrative becomes clear. The war is no longer defined only by battlefield positions in Donetsk or Kharkiv. It is now being fought on financial exchanges, in shipping registries, in energy markets, and across global diplomatic negotiations. The phrase on the podium, "securing our future," takes on broader meaning. It refers to a future where aggression cannot be rewarded, where states cannot expand their influence through violence, and where international security is not determined solely by force. As the leaders conclude, they do not declare final victory or immediate breakthroughs. What they present is a doctrine of sustained strategic pressure, military, economic, political, and legal. The press conference ends. The leaders exit the room together, demonstrating unity in visual form. Outside, protests continue on both sides of the war debate. The city moves on. The cameras are packed away. The statements are already being analysed by officials in Moscow, Brussels, Washington, and Kiev. But the message itself remains clear. The war is entering a new phase. Pressure will intensify. Resources will be redirected. Diplomacy will be pursued not as a first step, but as a final one, achieved only through leverage gained by action on multiple fronts. The coalition has decided that Russia must face consequences not only for its invasion, but for every day that the war continues. The future of Ukraine and the stability of Europe depends on sustaining that resolve. The message shared in London is that the coalition does not intend to stop, and it expects Ukraine, Russia, and the world to understand that clearly.